So what if a drug you might mostly know, for one thing, like anesthesia or maybe even mental health support, what if it actually plays this kind of hidden role in something as critical as, well, cancer recurrence?
It's pretty fascinating, isn't it? Medicine throws up these unexpected twists all the time.
It really does. And today we're looking at a really compelling example.
Yeah, our focus today is on some really interesting research suggesting ketamine, which is so widely used, could actually impact how cancer behaves after surgery, which is, truly remarkable and not something you typically think an anesthetic would do.
Absolutely not. So today we're exploring insights from a really key study. It's titled Perioperative Ketamine and Cancer Recurrence. This was central to episode 30, Ketamine versus Cancers, on the Talking Ketamine podcast. We're looking at these, well, groundbreaking findings about ketamine's potential role here.
Right. And our goal really is to unpack this science. It's a bit counterintuitive, maybe. We'll look at the research, give credit where it's due to the study naturally, and sort of figure out what it might mean. Whether you're just curious about ketamine having all these different uses, or maybe more focused on the complexities of fighting cancer, it definitely challenges some assumptions.
Okay, let's start with the big picture then. Cancer.
Uh,
It's a huge global health issue, isn't it?
Massive.
The numbers are pretty staggering.
Hmm.
We're talking estimates of like 19.1 million new cases,
Yeah.
nearly 10 million deaths globally.
Yeah.
That was just in 2020.
Yeah, and those are just numbers. Each one is a life, a family.
Exactly. It's an immense human cost and a huge challenge for medicine.
It really is. And it brings up a really important question. Why is cancer so deadly? And the answer, most of the time, is metastasis. That's the spread.
Right. When it moves from the original spot.
Exactly. And that spread accounts for up to maybe 90% of cancer deaths. It's the key problem. And with projections suggesting, 24 million new cases by 2035, surgery is still a main treatment, often the best hope for a cure.
But even successful surgery isn't always the end of the story, right?
That's the critical hurdle. Even when a surgeon removes the whole tumor, or thinks they have, recurrence is still a huge, devastating challenge. So preventing that cancer from coming back or progressing, that's a massive responsibility for the whole medical team.
Okay, and this is where ketamine enters the picture in this really unexpected way. We touched on this before in our discussion around ketamine versus lung cancer.
Yeah.
There was this initial finding that just seemed totally backwards.
Yeah, I remember that. It was odd.
Using ketamine as the anesthetic during surgery to remove lung tumors seemed to be linked to a lower chance of the cancer returning.
Exactly, lower chance. Which is,
Yeah.
yeah, completely surprising. We're talking non-small cell lung cancer here, NSCLC. It's
Yeah.
really common, unfortunately. And even after they think the surgery's gone well, recurrence happens in like 30 to 55% of patients. It's significant.
Wow.
So you just wouldn't expect an anesthetic, something used short-term for the operation, to affect long-term cancer outcomes like that.
Right, it was a real puzzle.
That initial finding, being retrospective, it really pushed researchers to say, okay, we need to look at this more closely. Is this real?
So that earlier hint, that possibility, led to this more focused study we're digging into now. They needed to know if it was just a statistical blip or something genuinely happening biologically.
Precisely. So this follow-up study was designed much more rigorously. They recruited 22 patients, all with early-stage NSCLC, all scheduled for surgery. And they were really careful about collecting blood samples. They took one before the surgery.
Okay, baseline.
Right. Then another one immediately after the operation finished.
To see the immediate impact.
Exactly. And then, this is key, they took a third sample 3 weeks later.
3 weeks later. Okay, so they compared patients. Some got ketamine during the surgery, others got dexatomidine, is that right?
Yeah, dexatomidine, often just called Dex, it provides a good comparison point.
Right. But why 3 weeks for that last sample? Why not sooner or later? What's special about 3 weeks?
That's a really important question about the design. The sample right after surgery shows you the immediate acute effects, the surgery itself, the drug.
Okay.
But waiting 3 weeks gives the body time to react more fully, to start healing, for the immune system to respond, maybe for some of the drug's longer-term effects to become clearer. It lets you see the more sort of sustained biological response, how things are settling down or changing over a bit more time, rather than just that initial shock.
Okay, that makes sense. Looking for the ripple effects, not just the splash.
Kind of, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
now this is where it gets weird, right? The results from that 3-week sample, especially about these things called CREs, circulating rare events.
Uh-huh. This is the twist. Immediately after surgery, there wasn't a huge difference in CRE levels between the ketamine group and the Dex group. Pretty similar.
Okay.
But at that 3-week mark, The group that had received ketamine actually showed a higher incidence of these CREs.
Higher.
Yes, higher. And specifically, an increase in cells that looked like endothelial cells.
Wait, hold on. Let me process that. The earlier data suggested ketamine meant less cancer coming back.
Right.
But this study, 3 weeks out, shows the ketamine group has more of these circulating things, these CREs, floating around, including cells linked to blood vessels.
That's what they found.
More circulating stuff, but linked to potentially better long-term outcomes.
Yeah.
That feels completely counterintuitive, doesn't it? Like, wouldn't more stuff circulating usually be seen as a bad sign?
You've absolutely nailed the paradox here. And yes, traditionally, that's exactly how we'd think. Maybe we should quickly define CREs a bit more. They're basically cells or bits shed from the tumor into the blood. Could be actual circulating tumor cells, cancer cells that broke off.
Right.
Or they can be these larger things called oncosomes, little packages of material shed by the tumor.
Okay.
And yeah, normally finding more of those in the blood would ring alarm bells. Suggests a higher risk of the cancer spreading.
So this ketamine finding really turns that idea on its head.
It does. It forces us to ask what's going on.
Okay, so how do the researchers try to explain this apparent contradiction, more circulating cells potentially being good?
Well, their hypothesis is pretty intriguing. They suggest that maybe this temporary increase in CREs, especially those endothelial-like cells, the blood vessel ones, maybe it means the ketamine is somehow disrupting the tumor's immediate environment, sort of shaking things up locally.
Disrupting it how?
Perhaps making the tumor, or fragments related to it, shed more easily into the bloodstream right around the time of the surgery. Like it's making it less stable, less cohesive for a short period.
But wouldn't more shedding be bad? Doesn't that sound like you're seeding new tumors everywhere?
Yeah.
That's my immediate reaction.
That's the logical first thought, absolutely. It's what makes this so counterintuitive. But the hypothesis goes a step further. Maybe this increased shedding happening right then isn't necessarily bad long term.
Ow.
Think about it like this. Perhaps having more of these cells or fragments suddenly circulating makes them more visible to the body's immune system.
Ah, okay, like flushing them out into the open.
Exactly. Or maybe it makes them more vulnerable to any follow-up treatments the patient gets, like chemo or radiation. It's like a temporary surge that might actually lead to better overall clearance down the line because the body's defenses or the treatments can suddenly see them better.
So the mind-bending idea is that this temporary danger signal might actually reflect something beneficial happening. Context and timing are everything.
Precisely. What looks bad in a snapshot might be part of a positive process over time. It's about that dynamic response.
That's a fascinating perspective shift. Okay, so it's not just about this weird shedding paradox. The study also mentions ketamine's anti-inflammatory effects.
Yeah.
That's something more established.
Yes, and that's likely a really important part of the picture too. It probably works alongside that shedding idea.
How does inflammation fit in?
Well, we know inflammation can kind of fuel cancer. It can create an environment where cancer cells grow more easily and spread.
Right, like fertilizer for weeds.
Sort of, yeah. Ketamine seems to dampen that inflammatory response. There's research, for instance, in mice. Forget and colleagues back in 2010 showed ketamine reduced lung metastases and improved survival. And they saw lower levels of IL-6.
IL-6, that's interleukin-6, a key inflammation signal.
Exactly, a pro-inflammatory cytokine. They saw similar effects in models of burn injury and sepsis too, so ketamine seems to calm that inflammatory storm.
Okay, so that's in animal models. Does it hold up in people?
It does seem to. More recent human studies back this up. One study, Ren et al., from 2022, found even a single low dose of ketamine, 0.3 milligrams per kilogram, reduced several inflammatory markers. Things like IL-6, IL-8, another one, and TNF-alpha, tumor necrosis factor alpha. This was in patients having colorectal surgery. And they even saw improved emotional responses.
Interesting.
And another study, Singh et al., in 2020, used a 0.5 milligram kilogram dose after heart bypass surgery, the off-pump kind. They found it significantly reduced CRP, which is C-reactive protein, a general inflammation marker, and also IL-6 for up to 48 hours after surgery.
So it seems pretty consistent across different situations.
Yeah, it suggests ketamine isn't just knocking you out for surgery, it's actively modulating that inflammatory response in a potentially helpful way, especially when inflammation might otherwise help cancer spread.
Are there other ways it tackles inflammation, like at the cellular level?
Yes, it gets quite detailed. Ketamine can inhibit certain things called transcription factors.
Like master switches for genes.
Pretty much. Specifically, it can inhibit AP1 and NF-kappa B. These are really important regulators of genes involved in inflammation and cell growth. So by hitting those, ketamine's interfering with the basic machinery driving inflammation inside the cells.
Okay.
And while, some studies combining ketamine with morphine for cancer pain saw changes in immune cells, like T cells,
Mm.
low-dose ketamine on its own didn't seem to cause major problems there, so the anti-inflammatory effect looks pretty solid.
This all sounds incredibly promising, almost revolutionary in a way. But we have to be careful, right? This was still early science, a small study.
Absolutely crucial point. Yes, just 22 patients in this specific study. That's a small sample size.
So we can't jump to huge conclusions yet.
Definitely not. It's a very compelling hypothesis based on these initial findings, but it needs much more work. Much larger studies, randomized controlled trials.
Right, to really confirm if this link is real and if those CRE changes truly predict better outcomes.
Exactly. We need to understand the mechanisms much more deeply. Where do we go from here? That's the big question.
And just to bring it back to the people involved, it's quite powerful that the lead author, Anna Shah, is a cancer survivor herself.
It really is. That personal connection adds such a profound dimension, doesn't it? It brings a different kind of urgency and perspective to the research, knowing firsthand what's at stake. It's not just data points, it's about finding better answers for patients.
Absolutely. So if we try to boil this all down,
You okay?
what's the main takeaway from this complex picture?
I think the biggest takeaway isn't just a simple ketamine might help, it's the how. It seems to be this really complex interaction involving this strange temporary spike in CREs that, against all intuition, might actually be a good sign in the long run. It really challenges our assumptions about biomarkers, about what things mean in the body.
Yeah.
And it reminds us that breakthroughs can come from looking at familiar things like ketamine in completely new ways.
It's been a really fascinating discussion. Seeing how a drug we think we know might have this entirely different, unexpected role in fighting something like lung cancer. It just shows how incredibly complex cancer biology is and how much we're still figuring out about how drugs interact with our bodies.
It really does. And it makes you wonder, doesn't it? If a common anesthetic can affect cancer like this, potentially in this paradoxical way, what other everyday medications might be quietly influencing our health, our body's fight against diseases in ways we haven't even begun to understand yet? What other counterintuitive discoveries are just waiting out there?
That's definitely something to think about. A really provocative thought to end on. Thank you for joining us for this really insightful conversation. We hope it sparked your curiosity and maybe given you a new perspective. Keep asking questions, everyone, and stay well informed.